school psychologist, and also the assistant principal head of teaching and learning, Mr. Lucas Silva, who I think is going to say hello at some stage as well. So we'll present to you, but Max is the main focus with the presentation that he's already shared with the students, and I think it might have a slightly different focus as we're dealing with an adult audience this afternoon, but basically the message is the same. And I just wanted to, by way of introduction, really to offer my reassurances that despite the ongoing situation, we're doing our very best to deliver, of course, high quality teaching and learning to the students, but also to support the students as best as we can remotely, and that of course extends to all of our school families. We have a very talented, a very experienced team in terms of our offering, in terms of pastoral support and welfare, which work very hard when the students are on site to look after their wellbeing. We have worked equally hard in very different circumstances and very challenging circumstances during the current situation. So I've got there just a list of the people that make up the secondary exceptionality team. Most of you will have heard us speak about the exceptionality team before, but basically this is the team of people that meet regularly to consider the welfare of all of our students, and consider not just their academic progress and how we can support that and assist that in every way possible, but also in terms of their welfare generally, their mental health, and the support that young people, for a variety of different reasons, need from time to time to be happy and to be comfortable in their learning environment. And that certainly has been challenged in recent days and months. So just a reminder that the house teams, the mentors, the heads of house, of course, who are listed there, they join with Lucas Silva, Max White, myself, the principal, of course, Ms Wilson, our transition coordinator, particularly focused on Year 7, of course, in their most important first year of secondary school, and Michelle Yarnton, our head of learning support. So that's the team that regularly focus on the welfare of our students, and we're very keen to hear from you with anything that we need to know about, and very keen to feed back to you as well in terms of how these young people are going. I'll hand over to Max now for his presentation, but we'll be around at the end if there are any questions for myself or Lucas or Max, of course. Max, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Just checking everyone you can hear me?
Yep.
Yep, excellent. All right. So
Yep.
Today I'm going to be talking about just some general stuff about mental health, and both as parents and as people going through this quite phenomenal year that we're all experiencing together. I've certainly never experienced anything like it. I imagine that's the same for all of you, and it's a pretty stressful time. So I thought I'd just start by touching on stress. You know, stress is something that affects us all. This is a very stressful experience to go through for most of us, I imagine. You know, stress can play out in the body in all sorts of ways. You know, it can affect us in our body, and our sort of sensations that we have in our body, you know, sort of feelings of tightness in the chest, and in extreme you might feel like a sudden feeling of choking or not being able to breathe, or sometimes breathing too fast, hyperventilating. Sometimes stress can make us feel nauseous, funny in the tummy, makes us feel like maybe we need to go to the toilet more than we usually do, sweaty palms, cold sweats. All of these things can be signs of, you know, anxiety and stress sort of building up in the body. Stress can affect us psychologically, and I sort of define that as, you know, having negative thoughts, you know, just worrying, thinking, ruminating about everything that's going on. That might be to do with personal situations, but also the more wider societal impact of COVID-19. And of course, negative emotions, you know, feelings of worry, sadness, fear, guilt, apathy, you know, a whole spectrum of emotions that can this situation may be eliciting in us and our families. And of course, then there's behavioural responses to stress. So that could be changes in diet, eating more or less than you used to, sleeping more or less than you used to, feeling like you can't relax or wind down, you know, noticing an increase in the amount of time you might be watching TV or using your phone. For the adults, you know, you might notice an increase in alcohol or substance use, and a decrease in physical activity. So, you know, what I'm saying is that stress can affect us in lots and lots of different ways. And, you know, one of the key messages that I want to sort of put out there is that, you know, stress can accumulate subconsciously and manifest in all sorts of unexpected ways in you and your family. So, you know, all these things, these are just things to keep an eye on. If you're starting to notice these things in yourself, or in your children, or in your partner or other members of your family, you know, just it's always good to reach out and say, hey, you know, how are you going? Yeah, you okay? All right, so I'm going to touch on tonight just some of the keys to resilience, and I'm going to touch on two things. You know, one, I think the thing that really resilient people have going on is that they're able to take action with what they can control in a certain situation, and accept the things that they can't control. So, you know, with regards to COVID-19, there are lots of things that are beyond our control, but there are also lots of things that are well within our control. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about mindset later. So, you know, what are some things you can control in the situation? Obviously, there's lots of things that you can't control. We can't control, you know, when Dan Andrews is going to end stage 4. You know, we can't control the changes in the laws that restrict our movement. You know, we can't control the fact that there's this virus circulating in our community. You know, we can't control the wider economic impact of this thing. But there are lots of things when you think of yourself as an individual, and when you think of yourself as your family as like a family unit, there are lots of things you can be doing to take control in the situation. I think a good routine is really, really important. And I think it's also important to recognize that as parents, you provide a model for your children about how to exhibit resilience, and just to be mindful of that. So let's talk about a routine. What are some of the key things you want to factor into your routine to keep, you know, your mental health as good as can be, and to be modeling resilience for your children? And just to say that none of the things I'm about to talk about are particularly groundbreaking or even interesting. But, you know, for the students that I've been supporting and the families that I've been supporting who are really struggling, I've consistently seen that these things are not generally in place. So, you know, they may be simple, but they are really important, is I guess what I'm saying. So, first thing I think really important is exercise. There's research paper after research paper after research paper out there that shows that, you know, exercise is one of the best things you can be doing for both your mental and physical health. And, you know, I'm predominantly talking about aerobic exercise, you know, doing something that gets your heart rate up for 30 or more minutes, you know, at least 3 times a week. That could be running, skipping, putting on your favorite music and dancing around like a wild person. Whatever it is, at the end of that 30 or more minutes, you should be sweating and you should be puffed out. Yeah. It's also good to think about strength building exercise, resistance exercise, you know, weights, pull-ups, whatever that might look like. Yoga, I also think is excellent. There are lots and lots of really good sort of yoga classes that you can do just on YouTube. There's one channel, I think it's called Yoga with Adrienne, which my wife does every night, and they seem pretty good. there's actually research that suggests that regular exercise is as effective for your mental health as antidepressant medications. And I would agree with that just from my own personal experience of being someone who used to be quite deeply unfit. And over the last 5 years or so, I've made it a really concerted effort to get off my backside and hit the pavement, so to speak. I really do feel a lot more mentally resilient now as a result of that. Exercise, it boosts the immune system, which is obviously really important in the COVID-19 world, to have a strong immune system. But I also think it really helps to develop mental stamina and resilience, which you can then apply to other areas of your life. And again, speaking from my own personal experience, at the moment the gyms are closed, so I'm focusing on doing running. When I go out for a run, after 3 or 4K, I'm tired. And there's a voice in my head that says, pretty tired now, why don't you stop or have a walk or turn around and go home? I developed another voice in my head that says, no, we're going to keep going. After 5 or 6Ks, that voice that tells me to sit down, go home, have a rest, gets louder. So I have to have another voice that gets even louder that says, no, we're going to keep going. And then by the 9th or 10th K, I'm knackered and I'm screaming at myself, no, you just got to keep going and get it over the line. And I think developing that inner voice that keeps you going is a really important part of resilience. And I think exercise is really good by doing that. And of course, leading by example. Your kids will do what you do much more than they'll do what you say. I don't know if you've found that as parents, but I think that is often the case. So just something to consider. At the moment, the gym's closed, so this is my way of doing my weighted squats. I thought you might enjoy this.
You count, Alfie. What happened to 9 and 10?
I'll laugh out of that. So the second thing to keep in mind with your routines is your nutrition. I know that being stuck at home, the pantry and the fridge are just over there, and all the sweet, tasty things that tend to call my name, but really, we are what we eat. Our body and mind are one and the same, and we really do run on the fuel that we put into ourselves. So, really think about, 3 healthy meals a day, healthy snacks in between, try to eat lots of, whole vegetables, fruits, nuts, grains, lean proteins, all that sort of thing. Drink lots of water throughout the day. Try to minimize sugar and highly processed foods, but obviously treats from time to time are fine. I've seen a lot of research that suggests that vitamin D is predictive against COVID-19 severity. So vitamin D supplements might be something you want to think about for you and your family. And just to note that as a parent, you ultimately control the contents of the pantry and the fridge at home. So if you're not happy with the dietary choices your adolescents may be making, have a think about what goes on the shopping list from week to week. Sleep hygiene is also really important. Should be getting at least 8 to 10 hours a night of sleep, both for yourself and for your kids. So if you're not, that's something to look at. I really strongly advise to not be using screens at least an hour before bed. The blue light that comes off screens, I think, disrupts your brain's natural process of going to sleep. And just for your parents out there, alcohol also can disrupt sleep quite significantly. I've seen some research that suggests that when you go to sleep after having had a few drinks, you're actually in a sedated state, not a natural sleeping state. and you don't get the same restorative benefits from that sedated sleep that you do from a natural sleep. So I assume none of your kids out there enjoy a tipple before bed, but it's something to keep in mind. Breaks, really important. I've been seeing a lot of students that just seem to be, during remote learning, sitting in front of their computer for really long stretches of the day. Really important that, every hour at the most, they're at least taking a few minutes away from the computer, going outside, doing some stretching, doing some mindfulness exercise, having a healthy snack, a cup of tea, whatever it is. And really important to be taking meaningful breaks throughout the day, stopping for lunch and getting away from the screen. I don't know about you, but I've found working from home and being on my screen a lot more than I'm used to incredibly tiring. So much so to the point I've actually bought myself some blue light filtering glasses, and I actually find them quite helpful. So if anyone is interested in purchasing some blue light glasses, I think they're good. There's a lot of time on our hands during lockdown, and I think how you and your family are spending that time is important. Like I referenced before, sort of think an increase in screen time seems to be the way that a lot of people are filling time. But just be mindful, there's a lot that you can do at home to develop your skills and your interests, whether that's learning an instrument or doing something creative, drawing, painting, sculpture, learning to knit, learning a language, playing chess. The internet is a remarkable place for the curious mind. There are lots of free tutorials available on YouTube. I mean, if you go to YouTube and type in, violin, learn to play the violin tutorial, you'll find lessons on how to play the violin. If you type in learn to bake sourdough bread tutorial, you'll find tutorials on how to bake sourdough bread. I mean, it really is quite extraordinary. And also don't forget, we've got the AGS enrichment program. I run the chess club in both the primary and secondary school, but there are lots of other clubs and interest groups to get involved in that you can see on the AGS website. Staying connected, really important. While we're all stuck at home, I think that's probably pretty obvious, but make sure you're calling, your friends, make sure your kids are staying actively engaged with their friends. There are lots of games and activities that you can play online over a Zoom or Teams call. I've put a couple of pictures in here. Obviously, Boggle and chess are pretty classic games that you can play online. But there are lots of games. If you just Google, games you can play online, there's heaps of activities. And also, just as parents of adolescents, just keep in mind that the short format texts and videos that are shared on social media platforms like Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and all of those sort of things, that's fine and that's fun and that keeps kids engaged with their peers, but that sort of short format communication, I think, is a poor substitute for having a long, meaningful conversation with your mate about how things are really going. So just to keep that in mind. So, how can I support my child if they're struggling? This is not an exhaustive list, but this is just some recommendations for you to think about. I'll circulate these slides to you all after this is done. So I think it's really important to make regular times to talk without distractions. Maybe before or after dinner, sit down as a family and try and have, frank, honest conversations about how it's really going. If your child is struggling, I think it can be helpful to listen non-judgmentally. So that's, where you just try and hear what your child is saying to you without putting your own thoughts and feelings and ideas into it or minimizing what it is they're telling you. And along with that, a sort of foundational counseling technique is a technique called reflective listening, what reflective listening is where you just say what the person has said to you back to them in your own words. You just summarize what they say. And that's a really powerful way of getting people to open up to you more, because it shows that you're really taking in what they're saying and trying to understand. Writing is an incredibly powerful technology for understanding the blooming, buzzing confusion of your own mind. Yeah, so I think writing down the specific problems and the negative thoughts and perceptions that are associated with those problems can be really illuminating. You know, I think what can be big problems in your mind can sometimes become much more manageable problems when you actually write them down and see them in front of you. And the same with your thinking. So just something to think about if you are having those conversations, sitting down as a family, have a pen and pad there to try and write things down. I think it's important to acknowledge problems without minimizing them, but then also try to put those problems in perspective. Problems exist. Everyone navigates problems, but there's a technique that I use. If you Google catastrophe scale, you'll find a wonderful image of a thermometer with increasing problems going up from the bottom as sort of like, things like getting called a name in the schoolyard or getting a bad mark on a test. And as you go up, you get to sort of, having a car crash or having your computer crash with an important assignment on it. And, you get to the top of the catastrophe scale and you've got things like, being eaten by a shark or, an asteroid colliding with the earth. And, so that sort of putting the problems in perspective can be a helpful thing to do. Try and collaborate on problem-solving strategies. Again, going back to writing, if you can really write down the problems and the negative thoughts and perceptions that are associated with those problems, that will really help you to talk openly like, okay, what are some strategies that we could try to solve these problems, and write those down too. And all of a sudden you get a clear picture of the problems and hopefully come up with a practical plan that you could put in place to solve those problems. Again, as parents, you're the model. So, it's really important that you model coping and self-care strategies. If you're not taking care of yourself, your child's going to see that. So that's something to keep in mind. Help keep as much structure, routine, and predictability as possible. I know that can be really difficult for many of you who are trying to work at home as well as homeschool your kids, but as much routine and structure as you can provide, I think will be helpful. And also, of course, using appropriate incentives, but also setting appropriate boundaries for your kids who may be struggling with, remote learning and whatever else. So hopefully that's some helpful suggestions for you to take on board. Obviously, I'm happy if any of you want to reach out to me and chat with me more about any of this. So some other things to sort of keep in mind when you're helping your young person through anything, or helping yourself or your partner through anything. There's a really great book called The Resilience Project. I've put a picture of the cover here. The Resilience Project is, we do a lot at Alphington, so your children may be familiar with this sort of as a framework, but basically it's that well-being, the three key pillars of well-being are gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness. So having an awareness of the good things in your life and the things that you're really grateful for, having an awareness of other people and how you can make a positive impact in other people's lives, and then mindfulness, which I'll talk about a little bit more in just a moment. So some things that you can be doing just to work within this framework, keeping a daily journal of the things which you're grateful for. So that goes back to writing things down. I think the good thing about doing this consistently over a period of time is that you very quickly go through the really obvious things. Oh, well, I've got a house and I've got a family and I've got, food in the fridge. You very quickly go through the obvious things. So if you keep doing it, you start having to pay attention and go, okay, well, except for the obvious things, what else was I grateful for today? And if you keep doing that, you start to train yourself to pay attention to what's good in life rather than paying attention to what sucks about life. And I think that's a really foundational thing that resilient people do, is that they're always aware of the good things in their life. And also reflect on how you and your family can help others, both within your family, but also without your family. I mean, that might be as simple as, you know, getting your child to call their grandparent every day if their grandparent is isolated in the current circumstance. You know, there are lots of things that you can do to help others, and that's, I think, important for well-being. And mindfulness. So I thought what I'd do is I'd just talk a little bit about what I understand you're doing when you practice mindfulness. So as a person, I think you can sort of define yourself or conceptualize yourself as having three aspects. You've got your past self. So that's your the person who you used to be, and that may consist of thoughts of things you've accomplished and are proud of, but also maybe things that you've failed to accomplish, regrets you might have, relationships that didn't go the way that you wanted them to. Conversely, you know, you have a future self, which is your anticipated self, which there may be things, hopes and things that you're excited about in the future, but in the future there might also be worries and unknowns and fears. But I think it's important to recognize that as a person, it's always right now. You exist in the present. You exist as an experiencing self, which experiences sensations, sights, smells, the feeling of breathing. Now, what you're ultimately doing when you practice mindfulness is you're training yourself to bring your attention to that experiencing self, to that present self. You know, we only have a limited amount of attention. You know, there's a metaphor in psychology which is called the spotlight of attention. I think a good metaphor is that, you know, we only have $10 worth of attention. And if we're spending our $10 here, we can't then also spend any money of our attention over here. That's not a great analogy, but I like it. So what you're doing when you're practicing mindfulness is you're training yourself to bring your $10 worth of attention to your experiencing self, and out of the future self where there might be those anxieties, and out of that past self where there may be those feelings of sadness or regret. There's a sort of a trope in psychology that depression's in the past and anxiety's in the future. So the more that you can train yourself to fully attend to the present moment, and the sensations, sounds, sights, and the feeling of breathing, the more that you can disconnect from those feelings of anxiety and disconnect from those feelings of sadness. And it really is a skill you can train yourself to do, just like you can train yourself to play the violin, just like you can train yourself to bake artisan sourdough bread. You can train yourself to disengage from negative emotions, because ultimately negative emotions are triggered by thoughts. Here's some recommendations for apps and websites that you can use to learn how to do mindfulness practice. Headspace and Smiling Mind are good for kids, and they're mostly free. My favorite is the Waking Up app with Sam Harris, which is a small subscription, but excellent, more than 100-day training program for mindfulness. I've used it myself and I highly recommend it. So the other thing I thought I would talk about is mindset. So there's a psychologist called Carol Dweck who introduced these terms and has done a lot of research and found that there are these two broad mindsets. There's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. A growth mindset is one where you don't see yourself as static. You see yourself as capable of moving forward. Whereas a fixed mindset is one where you see yourself as static. You see your abilities as limited, and you're either good at things or you're not good at things, right? So, you know, if you see, for example, like if you have a fixed mindset, you might say, well, I failed the maths test because I'm really bad at maths, right? So you put yourself, you label yourself, you put yourself in a box, right? And if I'm bad at maths today, well, I'll be bad at maths tomorrow, and I'll be bad at maths a year from now, yeah? Whereas a growth mindset is one where you try and look at problems more analytically and try and see problems as you know, challenges to be solved. So I failed the maths test because, you know, if I'm really honest with myself, I probably didn't study as much as I could. You know, I spent a lot of time on Snapchat last night when I could have been revising. You know, I probably didn't ask for enough help from my teacher, you know, and, you know, I also stayed up, you know, till 3 o'clock in the morning playing PS4, you know, so those things can be changed. You know, you can spend less time on social media, spend less time on your PS4, ask for more help from your teacher, and spend more time studying. And if you do all of those things, well, you probably will do a lot better on the math test next time. So I won't talk any more about mindset, but suffice to say, there are some really good books out there on developing resilient mindset in yourself and in your children. These 4 would be the ones that I recommend most highly. So we've got the actual book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is all about her history of research in this area. You know, she's done research which actually shows that if you congratulate children on the effort that they put into an academic task, like a maths test, versus if you congratulate them for being smart, the kids who get praise for effort will ultimately do better on future maths tests than the kids that are praised for being smart. So that, you know, instilling that hard work and perseverance is the most important aspect of resilience and success than, you know, the fact that you're smart. That message is very much echoed in the book Grit by another psychologist called Angela Duckworth, who has done a lot of research into really successful people and found that the thing that ties them all together, the common thread between people who are highly successful in business and sports and the military, is this idea of being able to look problems in the face and problem solve, basically. The obstacle is the way is another good one, and there's, of course, again, the Resilience Project.
Max, can I just a moment?
Yeah.
Hello, parents. Lucas Silver here. I just thought, rather than get to the end and forget about a question you may have had, sorry to treat you like students, but at the top of your screen, you'll see a little hand. If you click that hand icon, if you have any questions of Max as he's going through, then it makes it a little easier for us to pause, and I can tell Max that he's got a question on the way. So feel free, please, to ask any questions along the way.
Sure. We're not too close to, we're not too far from the end anyway, but yeah, absolutely. Feel free to ask any questions you want along the way. So yeah, just humor. I think, you know, psychologists have recognized for a long time that humor can be quite a healthy way to process upsetting thoughts and emotions. So, you know, try and laugh as much as you can every day with your friends and with your family. It's important. Just some things to avoid, obviously too much screen time, too much alcohol. Caffeine is associated with high anxiety, so try to watch your caffeine consumption. Also interferes with your sleeping patterns. Try not to watch too much news. I mean, at the moment, we're just being bombarded with, you know, bad news story after bad news story in relation to COVID-19. So, you know, it's important to stay informed, but try and switch your devices off, switch your TV off, and just be in the present moment with your family as much as you can. Like I said, there's so many aspects of COVID-19 you can't control, so it's not worth paying attention to it all the time. Try not to catastrophize, you know, keep problems in perspective. Don't let them snowball in your head into these massive, you know, world-ending things. But in saying that, I do recognise that this is, for many of us, a very challenging time. You know, talk to each other. Don't isolate. Don't bottle up your emotions, and try as much as possible not to take stress out on loved ones. I know that can be difficult when you're all stuck at home and on top of each other, but you know, take care of each other. And you know, it's okay to say when you're not going okay, and when your kids aren't going okay. You know, communicate regularly with the teachers and the pastoral team. We're all really here to help. We all understand that this is tough. You know, don't be hesitant to reach out. You know, I'm here. You can make a time for you or your child to talk with me. And also, you know, there's also the mental health care plan through Medicare, where if you feel you might need some professional support, you can speak to your GP and they can give you a plan for 10 subsidised sessions with a psychologist. There's just some mental health resources here for you. Kids Helpline is a really good one to have on your phone or on your kid's phone. It's just a free 24 hours a day, 7-day a week mental health counselling and crisis support line for young people. Really fantastic resource. And just some other resources here. There's Beyond Blue has got a really good website all about stuff to do with mental health and coronavirus. And then, of course, there's always Lifeline, Men's Line, and some website there about the Medicare mental health care plan. I'll send around these slides. And finally, you know, well done. What a time we've come through. But by and large, the feedback is that, you know, our kids and our parents have been doing amazingly with juggling, working from home, learning from home. You know, I'd be really interested to see how this cohort, the year 7s, year 8s, year 9s go in VCE, because I think they're learning university level study skills at the moment. You know, the independence and the self-discipline they have to have at the moment is pretty extraordinary. So, you know, kids will learn a lot about themselves through having gone through this, I think. So that's it. Hopefully that was helpful. We're now Lucas, Silver, Rowan Evans, and myself are here and happy to stay on the line and answer any questions that you might have.
Can I just thank you, Max, for the presentation and for looking after the. I think we're getting some feedback of a printer. The printer struggling to print. If everyone could just mute their microphone for a minute, please. Oh, there we go. Printing is finished. Thank you, Max. I just want to echo what you said about the kids doing really well and learning university skills. They definitely are. The level of independence that has been thrust upon them is unheard of. And I think to be positive, even though some are struggling at the moment, they will come through this stronger people. And that's very important. And I'm very, very impressed with our students, and I'm very, very impressed and thankful to our parents, because without you, our kids would not have got through this. I have 2 bits of good news, and feel free to just click the hand icon in support of this if you'd like. We have 7 days left. So that's all. 7 days left. Hopefully, there you go. Hands up already. That's the record. They're coming up quick. Yep. Oh dear. Thank you. I agree. It's been a nightmare for not just your kids, but for you, for us, for all of us. But we've got through, and I really thank the parents for that. All the hands are up. I hear you. Also, the other good bit of news that I have is that. You can tell your kids this too. I've emailed the teachers today, this morning, first thing, and I said that I don't want any homework, holiday homework set over the holidays for years 7 to 10. I think they have had enough, and they need the holiday to recuperate and rejuvenate and get their heads around hopefully returning to school in term 4. Sunday, as we all know, is the day we hear about the roadmap out of these restrictions. The GAT, which is an exam that the year 11s and 12s do, is scheduled by the government for the first week back of school. So they definitely have the intention of sending year 11 and 12 back to school from the first week. There has been mention of staggering the return for the rest, so hopefully they don't take too long to stagger everyone back. But we are getting to the end, so no holiday homework, 7 days to go. I think that's a nice way to end. However, we still have a little bit of an opportunity for any questions from parents about the remaining time, or any assistance that they can get from Max, Rowan or myself. Please feel free to ask now.
I've got a question. I think it's a question from the Giannakis family, unless that's just a show of support to your question, the Giannakis family.
No, I think that's just they're happy that we've got 7 days left. There you go, hands are coming down. Any other, if the hands come down and then we can put hands back up for any parents who want a question. I feel like I'm teaching you like 7th English.
No, this is just this sharing screen.
There are people on.
Well, there's a lot of people on here.
I want to see who's on there.
You can't, because it's sharing.
Oh,
Can't see on this sharing screen.
Okay.
No
Are there any questions for Max or for Lucas or myself that we can help you with now?
Doesn't seem so.
All right. Well, thank you all for paying attention. I hope that was there was something in that was helpful for you. And like I said, I will get the office staff to distribute the slides from the presentation for your reference.
Thank you very much, Max. Much appreciated. The students, as I say, have already seen this presentation or a version of it. We were just keen to share it with you in the hope that it might assist everyone. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and we hope you gained something from it. Thank you again. Have a good evening.
Thank you, parents.
Thank you.